Your air conditioner is running. Right now, it is cycling, straining, and spitting hot air into a hotter yard. Right now, 40 miles from the nearest city, I know a farmhouse built in 1887. There, the same summer heat is handled by buried pipe, deep soil, and a draft that never asks the meter for permission. No compressor, no electricity, no service call. Your system hums through the afternoon. Then the bill arrives. In Holmes County, Ohio, I stood inside a whitewashed basement kitchen where the loudest sound was a clock. The floor stayed cool through my boots. The walls held steady. The air moved so slowly, you almost missed it. No register blast, no fan chop, no plastic thermostat glow. In town, you close curtains at noon and still feel heat radiating off drywall by 3. Out there, a shaded intake fed earth-cooled air through a masonry channel. A dark chimney on the sun side kept pulling warm air upward. One system fights summer with a motor, the other lets physics do the lifting. One breaks, one waits. You know the modern pattern because you live inside it. The thermostat drops 2 degrees. The compressor kicks on. The rooms cool fast, then warm fast, because the walls never stopped storing heat. By sunset, the unit has been working for hours, but the couch still feels warm and the ceiling still radiates. You paid for noise. You paid for motion. You paid for a machine to outrun bad design. Then I walked into that farmhouse and felt the opposite. The coolness was not blowing at me. It was sitting there. It had weight. It was in the floor, in the plaster, in the shade under the porch roof, in the stone at the north wall. The house did not feel refrigerated. It felt protected. That is a different thing. One system lowers air temperature. The other lowers the temperature of the surfaces touching your life. That difference matters more than most builders admit. The Department of Energy says radiation from warm walls and ceilings reaches your body directly. You feel that heat even when the thermostat number looks decent. Cool the surfaces and your body relaxes sooner. Cool only the air and the house keeps giving heat back. Nobody told you. Not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you that condenser. That contrast is the whole story. The gap between those two systems is not technology. It is not innovation. It is a decision people made in 1922 that contractors, architects, and code writers were trained to reinforce. Here is that decision. I cool my house for $5.18 a summer because the ground 8 feet down does not care what the utility charges. It stays steady. It keeps offering the same answer. And yes, this works even if your house was built 50 years ago. It still works if you live in a city. It still works if you have never done this before. Stay with me, because what I found in Holmes County uses the same physics the Persians used to cool desert buildings 3,300 years ago. The science is brutally simple. The United States Department of Energy says the shallow Earth stays between 40 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on region and season. That is your battery. That is your sink. When hot indoor air moves past cooler ground-coupled surfaces, heat flows out of the air by conduction and convection. Then buoyancy takes over. Warm air rises. Cooler air sinks. The cycle keeps renewing itself. The Department of Energy explains your body cools through convection, radiation, and perspiration, and ventilation enhances all three. Your house obeys the same rules. Think of a car radiator in reverse. Instead of dumping engine heat into outside air, you dump room heat into stable soil and cooler masonry. Same physics, different direction. In the mechanical world, the field calls efficiency the coefficient of performance. Ground-coupled heat pumps commonly deliver 3 to 6 units of heating or cooling for every 1 unit of purchased energy. Window units and older central systems work much harder for less. A passive earth-coupled draft pushes the purchased input towards zero because the temperature difference does the work, not because it failed. Because purchased energy is where the money lives. The National Park Service showed the same principle at Zion Canyon Visitor Center in Utah. Its passive strategies cut cooling energy 95.6% and total energy use 74.4%. That building also relies on low inlet openings, high outlet openings, thermal mass, and downdraft cooling towers. In other words, cool air enters low, warm air leaves high, and mass smooths the shock of afternoon heat. It is the same old language: stone, shade, height, pressure. There is another layer you need to see. Humidity changes what cooling feels like. Mechanical systems often chase humidity with cold coils and more electricity. A ground-coupled draft attacks the load earlier by avoiding heat gain, reducing radiant temperature, and moving air through cooler pathways. Your comfort arrives sooner because fewer hot surfaces keep leaking heat back into the room. The house stops fighting you. That gap represents billions of dollars in equipment, refrigerant, repair, and service every year. And that is why you have never heard of this. I first felt the Amish proof in Berlin, Ohio, inside Holmes County, during a July week that kept hitting the low 90s. Outside, cicadas screamed from the fence line. Inside, I heard nothing mechanical at all. The kitchen floor felt cool, the pantry wall felt cooler. I stood there waiting for a hidden mini split. It never appeared. A man named Eli smiled when I asked where the cool air came from. He tapped the wall with 2 fingers and said, "The hill does most of it." Then he showed me the shaded intake. He showed me the buried line. He showed me the sun-facing chimney above the washroom. His family had used some version of it for 4 generations. He said the pattern came down with people who left Canton burn, passed through the Palatinate, and kept what worked. I remember the smell first: damp limestone, soap, apples somewhere deeper in the room. I remember a crock of butter sitting where any suburban kitchen would ruin it by noon. I remember hearing horse hooves outside and realizing I still had not heard a compressor. That silence teaches faster than any diagram. You stop thinking about gadgets. You start thinking about orientation, mass, shade, and depth. Eli told me his grandfather never used the word passive. He used the word sensible. Windows stayed smaller on the hot side. Work moved toward the banked wall after lunch. Summer food went where earth stayed honest. He laughed when I asked if anyone had calculated it. Then he said the line I wrote down immediately. "You do not calculate a hill," he said. "You build with it." That knowledge never disappeared. It was written out of the manual. It was waiting. Pennsylvania agricultural records still document spring houses, banked kitchens, and earth-sheltered farm structures built for the same cooling logic. So does the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission study on the Lancaster Plain, published in 2008. Long before that Ohio kitchen, Persians were doing this in desert cities with bad gear wind catchers and qanats. The BBC reported that wind-catching technology reaches back 3,300 years. The Daulatabad Garden Tower in Yazd still rises 33 meters. Air drops through the shaft, crosses cooler mass and water, and enters living space far below the rooftop heat. In the American Southwest, Pueblo and other native builders solved the same problem with thick adobe walls and shaded openings. The Smithsonian has described how adobe absorbs heat through the day, keeping interiors much cooler, then releases that heat after sunset. Different land, different materials, same answer. Korean builders reach the same lesson from a different direction. Their ondol systems are famous for heat, but the building logic around them prized mass, floor control, and seasonal air management. Roman builders learned it too. Thick masonry, shaded courtyards, fountains, and controlled openings kept interior zones calmer than the street outside. The Persians did not read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered, by paying attention to what the earth was already doing. Every civilization that mastered extreme heat arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot. They carried it from Canton burn and the Palatinate to Pennsylvania and Ohio about 289 years ago. They kept building it because it worked. They never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. Now the anger In 1922, Willis Carrier publicly debuted the centrifugal chiller at the Rivoli Theater in New York. That machine cut cost and complexity for large comfort cooling installations. It protected the future value of mechanical cooling equipment, service contracts, refrigerants, and building designs that depended on them. Every building kept livable by shade, masonry, cross-draft, and earth coupling threatened thousands of dollars in equipment sales. It also threatened decades of maintenance after that. The mechanism was not a single midnight conspiracy. It was a sentence: 30 cubic feet per minute per occupant. ASHVE had promoted that rate earlier, and ASHRAE's own history says that by 1922, 22 states had building codes requiring it. In practice, that favored powered ventilation in larger sealed buildings. Then post-war architecture locked the choice in. ASHRAE's history of office buildings says the Commonwealth building became the prototype for the modern, fully air-conditioned building. Lever House, completed in 1952, made air conditioning fundamental because sealed glass walls could not operate without it. The named allies were obvious. Media and entertainment businesses loved cooled theaters because summer seats sold. Government code bodies normalized higher ventilation rates that leaned on electric systems. Industry took the profit. Carrier sold chillers. General Electric sold room coolers. General Motors chemists Thomas Midgley, Albert Henn, and Robert McNary helped bring chlorofluorocarbon refrigerants to market. That made home units safer to sell at scale. Nobody told you, not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you that condenser. An entire field of knowledge disappeared from architecture schools, farm manuals, and mainstream building habits. Not because it failed, because it was not profitable. The modern continuation is still happening. In 2023, the National Association of Home Builders adopted Resolution 2023.6 number 10 and explicitly partnered with the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute on refrigerant code and liability issues. Open Secrets reports AHRI spent $964,622 lobbying in 2022 alone. The arguments today are safety, standards, and compliance. The money is still equipment turnover, refrigerant transition, replacement cycles, and locked-in service markets. Look at how complete the lock-in became. The Department of Energy says air conditioning now sits in nearly 100 million American homes. It also says 88% of homes have some form of it. The same agency says air conditioners use about 12% of household electricity and cost homeowners about $29 billion every year. Once the house is designed for sealed operation, the machine becomes permanent. Then the parts market becomes permanent. Then the replacement cycle becomes permanent, and codes kept shaping the lane. Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and Oak Ridge National Laboratory work on ventilation standards. Those standards now allow both natural and mechanical paths in homes. That flexibility arrived late. EPA has warned that indoor air protection stays in perpetual catch-up because energy and code politics move faster. That sentence matters. Standards decide what builders feel safe specifying. Safe often means familiar. Familiar often means profitable. The air conditioning market tied to those choices is worth tens of billions a year in America. Every alternative installed is a condenser, refrigerant charge, and service contract that never gets sold. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people with land, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to tear up your foundation. You need a yard, a drill, a bottle, a weekend. If your lot is small, the geometry still works. You are not building a utility plant. You are building a pressure difference. A narrow side yard is enough for one buried run. A shaded strip behind a row house is enough for a shorter trench feeding a basement hall. Even a detached garage wall can become the sunny chimney face. That works if the house and garage share an air path through a simple breezeway connector. The point is not acreage. The point is depth, shade, and vertical lift. You also do not need to hit one perfect number. Soil varies, moisture varies, Shade varies. What matters is the stack of small advantages. Keep sun off the west glass. Let the ground handle the first temperature drop. Let the chimney keep air moving after lunch. Let masonry, plaster, and flooring absorb the spike instead of your body. When those pieces work together, summer stops feeling like an emergency. That is why families trusted this long before meters and apps. The system degrades gracefully. If one screen clogs, you clean it. If one seal cracks, you reseal it. If a storm tears flashing off the chase, you replace flashing. Nothing inside the wall contains refrigerant. Nothing waits for a proprietary board. Nothing demands a technician with a truck full of gauges. That simplicity is not primitive. It is resilient. At night, open the high outlet wider and crack one low window on the shaded side. Night purge cools the structure itself. By morning, the floor and interior walls start below the day's peak. Then the buried line has less work to do. This is how you get whole house comfort instead of one cold blast in one room. You cool the building first, then the air. That changes everything fast. Here's the simplest version I trust. You start on the north or east side of the house, where the ground stays shaded longest. You trench one run 7 feet deep and 32 to 40 feet long. Use smooth wall 4-inch HDPE drain pipe or 4-inch schedule 40 PVC, not corrugated black flex. Keep a 2% slope down toward a small gravel sump so condensation has somewhere to go. Then bring that line through a rim joist or basement wall. End it in a floor grill near the center of the house. At the far end, build the exhaust side. I use a 10-inch black stovepipe or round metal duct. It rises 11 to 14 feet inside a simple plywood chase on the south wall. Line the sun side with low E radiant foil or flat black metal, depending on climate. You want heat there. Sun on that vertical pipe creates draft. Draft pulls indoor air upward. The buried intake replaces it with cooler air from the soil run. That is the engine. No motor, no fan. At the intake, add 2 stainless insect screens, a removable filter box, and a muslin cotton pre-filter you can wash. Bed the pipe in 3/4-inch washed gravel for drainage and seal wall penetrations with polyurethane caulk. If your soil stays wet, wrap the trench with geotextile fabric. The slope is not optional. A flat pipe causes standing condensation, biofilm, and sour air. Materials stay cheap if you keep the run modest. The pipe will cost $68 to $122. Gravel runs $24 to $46. Screens cost $7 to $14. A grill, caulk, and fittings add $31 to $63. Plywood, metal duct, and fasteners for the chimney run $74 to $148. Even with a washable MERV filter box, you land around $214 to $393 total. Most people can finish the trench and pipe in one Saturday morning, then build the chimney over one more weekend. You can tune the result without spending much more. If your house is under 1,200 square feet, one 4-inch run can work. If it is 1,200 to 1,800 square feet, use 2 runs spaced 18 to 24 inches apart in the trench. Keep the intake hood at least 24 inches above grade and 10 feet from a driveway. Put the indoor outlet low, not high. You want the cool air where bodies live. If you have a crawl space, you can still do this. Run the line to a sealed mixing box, then open it into a central hallway. If you have a basement, better. Use the basement as your first buffer, then let the chimney pull from the stairwell. Paint the chimney dark. Give it sun from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Even a 12-foot chase can create useful draft if the indoor path stays open. Do not expect miracles from bad envelopes. Close west blinds before noon. Shade south glass with an awning or 24-inch overhang. Use attic ventilation. Fix obvious air leaks. This system works best when you stop adding heat faster than the soil can absorb it. On a 95-degree day, this kind of setup can feed 54 to 58-degree intake air early in the cycle. It can hold lived-in rooms 9 to 14 degrees cooler by late afternoon. Not refrigerator cold, livable cold, sleeping cold, shirt-on cold. It requires attention once a season. Flush the intake with a 3% hydrogen peroxide rinse, wash the muslin, and inspect the sump drain. That is it. Your central air costs $7,800 to $14,600 to install. It costs $96 to $241 per month to run in hot season. It lasts 12 to 15 years before it ends up in a landfill. This costs $214 to $393 total. It lasts 20 to 30 years. Your choice. Everything I have covered across this channel is in one place. I mean, root cellar temperature control, low-tech pantry storage, and winter window heat traps. Step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order families actually use it. It does not have a name yet. Link is in the description, but stay here. Because what Eli built is the part nobody is talking about yet. And I mean that literally. Most people hear passive cooling and picture a luxury architect drawing or a desert museum. They do not picture an ordinary yard, a trench, a simple wall chase, and a house that stops panicking every afternoon. That is why this matters. It is not exotic. It is close. If you believe real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe, not for me, for what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who have decided they are done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop your state, your July power bill, or the cooling trick your grandfather swore by in the comments. I read every single one. And your answers decide what we cover next. Next week, I am going to show you what a 1946 Penn State document reveals about summer food storage. It uses nothing but lime wash, airflow, and stone. And the report proves universities knew the method worked generations before the hardware aisle replaced it. You are not going to want to miss that one.